Imagine a world where AI-generated video and audio is so sophisticated that you can't tell the difference between what's real and what's fake. Well, that world now exists.
I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality.
Today, we talk about the first AI deepfake heist that scammed a multinational corporation out of millions of dollars. We also discuss tipping fatigue and how Gen Z is achieving the American dream of becoming a homeowner. But there is a caveat. They're buying tiny houses online that can be put together in 20 minutes. Are prefabricated tiny homes just glorified tents, or are they making housing more affordable?
Where there's a will, there's a way, even in poverty.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not.
Deepfakes have been tricking people into scams and fraud, and they are now so realistic that people can't tell the difference between what's real and what's digitally generated. The Federal Communications Commission has now outlawed all robocalls that employ AI-generated voices after deepfake calls imitating the voice of President Joe Biden encouraged voters not to show up to participate in the New Hampshire primary. The problem is becoming so bad that it's now fueled the world's first AI deepfake heist. This month, a multinational company lost $25 million in a heist after employees at its Hong Kong branch were tricked by deepfake technology. Scammers reportedly set up a video conference featuring deepfake videos of the company's chief financial officer and other employees instructing a worker to transfer money to them. And it worked. Hong Kong police are not releasing the name of the company, so we don't know which company this is referring to because they're doing an investigation. But as this technology improves, it's only gonna get harder for the average person to tell the difference. So we need effective deepfake detection tools, but unfortunately, deepfakes are outpacing those current detection methods.
Wait, so how did this guy actually pull this heist off?
So we don't have any details because they don't want to release that information as they're investigating because they don't want to give it away. I'm imagining that this must have been somebody pretty high up in the company that obviously had access to transfer massive amounts of money to somebody, and it must have been somebody that would regularly have calls with the CFO. If not, this employee is a complete moron or is probably involved in it somehow. Who knows?
Yeah, but they also had the sophistication to be able to create a deepfake that was convincing enough.
Yes, and I'm wondering if it was even live. So if they had this video that was maybe live and the CFO, because I imagine if you're on a video conference, it has to be live talking and talk back. Otherwise, it would be really weird. And that's a lot of money. I can't imagine any employee would just suddenly transfer that money without being pretty certain that what they're doing is something that they should be doing or that they normally do.
Reminds me of Office Space, where they pulled a scam on their company, but this is the modern day equivalent of that scam. If Office Space was made today, that's how they would pull off a scam.
Together, 'cause you know, like me, it's never forever.
Oh shit.
So Tyson, remember when we did our other deepfake episode and you said you didn't really care if someone made deepfakes of you because it wouldn't matter? But now they're so realistic that it does matter. This technology is wild. It could be potentially super dangerous, not only scamming people out of money, but it could completely ruin your life. Someone could make a deepfake video of you that nobody can tell is fake, and it could cost you a lot.
It's like we're gonna have to go back to how we used to do things face to face in person.
Yeah.
Until the robots get so convincing that you can't tell if it's a robot. Give that another 30 or 40 years.
I mean, you're right. It would be funny that now businesses are conducted offline and they just go back to like writing things by hand and meeting in person.
Right.
Oh man, everyone's going back to the office. The days of Zooming are over.
And we're gonna have to go through a period where people are more scammed than ever before.
Yeah, just
Which
like this
scamming
guy.
has already increased since the pandemic because so many people were unemployed that they all just became scammers because nobody had money. So scamming will just keep going up and up. As the rich get richer, the poor get poor. We're gonna live in a world where rich people are scammed all the time. That's a sign of the times, I guess.
I guess so.
It's like, there are two jobs for people that are poor and unemployed. You can become a scammer or you can do porn. Or you can do porn and scam people with porn.
You know, corporate accounting is sure as hell gonna notice 305,300... 2613, Michael!
A A woman named Justice is causing a stir after admitting that she did not tip her hairdresser for a job that took over 7 hours and cost $350.
Did not feel like tipping was necessary on the service. For reference, this was $350 to get done. That averages out, took her 7.5 hours, $46 an hour. I think that that's a really good price. How many people are making $40 an hour?
All right, so she said she didn't mean any shade to the hairdresser, and in fact, she praised the hairdresser's work, saying it was the best job she'd ever had, but she didn't want to tip because she's quite simply burnt out on tipping culture. She says you're expected to tip everywhere you go now, from the coffee shop, getting a to-go coffee, or even at self-checkouts, and she's just quite simply tired of it. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But of course, people are divided on this issue because service industry jobs, these people don't make a living wage a lot of times. This woman did because she's essentially making, $40 an hour, but a lot of people don't. So that's why they're divided on this issue. I can certainly relate to tipping fatigue. I'm a pretty generous tipper, but I do notice myself not wanting to order out or go out to eat as often because I look at how expensive food has gotten and how much the extra fee is going to be on top of that. So instead of not tipping, I just don't go.
Yeah, I feel like it was only about 4 or 5 years ago that, you didn't tip as much, but then suddenly everyone started implementing the, button that's 10 to 5 to 15% because everything's digital now. So, tips are a bigger part of buying transactions at places. And naturally, there's going to be people that are against that. So here we are.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't make a living wage, and so they rely on those tips. But as a consumer, it's very annoying when I go to a restaurant and you're already going to pay 20%, and then they say, we're going to charge you an extra 2% on top of that to pay for healthcare for our employees. It's like, dude, I'm paying for my own healthcare out of pocket because I'm not having an employer pay for it. So now I got to pay for theirs too? It's just crazy. We're all in the same boat and we're all trying to help each other out, but it's not really helping much.
Well, yeah, the employer should be paying for the healthcare anyway and not pushing that onto the person buying the food.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are good things and bad things about the story. I do tip every chance that I can, not the maximum, but you're right, a lot of these people only live off the tips, so.
Yeah, and a lot of people that do services like the hairstylist, she sets her rates high enough, hopefully, to account for the fact that people are not always going to be generous tippers. So I'm curious to know what her take on this is, if she will even accept that customer back in the future.
Yeah, but, there are certain people in society that, they see that tipping is increasing because everything's become digital with that button system, and so they're going to get upset about it.
I also think it's great when I go to restaurants. Some of my favorite restaurants are the ones that they don't want you to tip because it's already included in the price. Like, I'm really bad at math. I hate having to get out my stupid Apple Watch and hit the 20% button every time and put in how much it costs. It makes me feel so stupid, but I wish that they would just put it in there and tell you what you owe and you could just call it a day.
Okay.
Younger generations are getting priced out of the housing market. Until now. Gen Zers and millennials are buying prefabricated tiny homes on Amazon for under $40,000, as the median price of American homes tops $400,000. Here in California, the median house is over $770,000. And last year, home affordability hit the lowest point in nearly 40 years. Unfortunately, it's only getting worse. So young people are coming up with a new solution. An LA resident recently purchased a tiny home on Amazon for $26,000 that he plans to turn into an Airbnb rental. He said it took a team of 5 people to put the 19 by 20 foot compact ADU together in 20 minutes. Now, if you're not sure what size it is, it's about the size of a little garage. This has a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, and it can be hooked up with plumbing and electrical. But the problem is that he doesn't have permits or any land yet to put the house on, so he's currently just storing it temporarily until then.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea to buy a cheap box and flip it. Basically flipping a garage and putting it somewhere. We're standing in a garage space basically right now, so yeah, it makes me kind of wish I had done that when I had the opportunity.
Well, yeah, another guy documented his Amazon tiny house purchase. It cost him $38,000. So if people can legally get these tiny houses up and running as ADUs, it could actually combat the housing affordability crisis. But the key here is getting those permits and getting it legally cleared. It's also sad though that the American dream is now to buy this like little garage and hope that maybe you can like plop it in your mom's backyard. You know, that's the American dream now, instead of actually being able to afford a home after working all day every day.
Right. I mean, the house that I grew up in now, like looking back and being like, how am I ever going to afford the house that I was just born in?
Yeah.
That my parents were able to afford.
Yeah, the price of housing has completely outpaced wages, so we are at the point where people can't afford to buy homes. Sure, you might be able to buy this tiny garage-sized little house, but if you don't have land to put it on, which by the way, land is incredibly expensive as well. In Los Angeles County, it can still cost you several $100,000. So for a couple $100,000 plus the $20,000 or $40,000 for this little box, like, are you really saving that much money? You're just getting a really small amount of square footage.
So if you buy one of these cheap houses, like if they're cheap, how long would they even last?
So apparently they're actually very well made, and that they can hold up just as well as, you know, a house that is built not prefabricated. But
What if a tornado comes?
Yeah, well, what if a tornado comes to any house? I think the thing to remember here is homeownership used to be a way to build wealth, but I'm not sure how you can build equity with a tiny house. I'm sure there's a way, maybe it's a little bit slower of a build, but it's not gonna be as much. I'm not sure how much wealth you can build, but at the same time, you'll at least have a cheap house to live in. So yeah, it's just something interesting that we're seeing right now.
Sure, it's another sign of the times. I keep saying that, like every story we've done. Sign of the times, sign of the times. Okay, do you think these tiny homes will be something that appreciates or depreciates?
That's a really good question. I couldn't even begin to answer that because right now, houses are appreciating so much in price because it's incredibly expensive to get a loan, especially right now. Loan rates for mortgages are incredibly high, but every year housing goes up because of those loans. Now, if you're buying a tiny house and you don't necessarily need to take out a loan, I'm not really sure that the price can go up as much to justify those loans that you no longer need, which is interesting in itself because the banking system kind of relies on us to take out these massive loans to buy houses and pay them exorbitant amounts of interest.
My rent just went up this month by $100. Where's all this money going for all the prices that keep going up? Like, just into the pockets of the 1% of the 1%?
I mean, yeah, essentially.
When are we gonna push the button that says stop, go back? Like, this is too much?
When we all just buy tiny houses, don't take out any loans, and put them on little trailer park style lots, and that's it. That's the new American dream, guys. No banks involved.
Living in a garage is the American dream.
Living in a garage.
That you can barely afford.
That you can put in a storage unit because you can't afford to buy the land.
Right.
So living in a tiny house in a storage unit is the new American dream, guys. Sign up for it. Are you excited? 2024, yes.
Yeah, I've seen some of these tiny homes on like Instagram, and they look extremely cute because the people that buy them like have done them up and they've really done a set design thing to make them look really nice. But it's still mostly a fantasy. For the average person, for me, I couldn't even fit a quarter of my stuff into one of those places.
Exactly.
Like if my stuff would take up all the space and I'd be like maybe just squeezed in there. I couldn't work or anything.
Right, I think that's the thing. It's like this tiny little place, and not to poo-poo it, look, having your own space is so important, and for people that this is all they can afford, that's great. I'm glad that they have an option, as opposed to before where maybe they would be living in an actual tent or having to live forever with their parents or with a million roommates. So I'm glad that this option exists, but it is really sad that this is where we're going, where our economy is going. What do you guys think about the tiny house trend? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you liked this episode. Thanks for watching. I'm Brigida.